Hi everyone, it's Tamara here for the Sweet November Stamps Wonderful Winter YouTube Hop and Giveaway. Make sure you check out the description box below on how to enter this awesome competition and your chance to win the entire new release. Today I'll be using the Baby Bominable clear stamp set, and you know me, I'll be making an interactive card. So let's get started with the Copic colouring first, and then we'll move on to the card making portion. Okay, now we're just going to be removing the actual arms on our main image because we'll be having some movable arms underneath, so we don't need the actual arms that come with our stamped image. But I just wanted to show you my colouring up this entire image when I did my colouring. So I'm just fussy cutting out around his head to cut off those arms. So you'll see me just cutting out and just moving it up to the edge of his body. And I end up also cutting out the actual white border that's around him initially, so that it matches in with where I've cut his arms off. So now I've actually done some partial stamping to actually have the arm portions just showing on some Copic cardstock. And I'm just going to draw in, because obviously his head covers up the top part of his arms. I'm just using a multi-liner to draw the rest of those arms in place. Initially, I did do this with pencil because I'm not the best drawer, so I always like to kind of do a little draft with a pencil and then go over with the multi-liner once that's done. And I will color these off screen because obviously you've already seen how I colored them on the actual main image. And I'm going to fussy cut directly against that black line like I did with the rest of his body. So I'm just going to show you cutting out one of these arms, and I do exactly the same thing for the other, just leaving a little bit of extra space on the end. I'll be using some Distress Oxide inks today to do my background, including Chipped Sapphire, Peacock Feathers and Speckled Egg, and just using my Ranger domed sponge applicators. So I've just started off with the Speckled Egg right in the middle as my highlight, and then blending that out with the Peacock Feathers. So I just work between these colors in circular motions initially, and then just at the end I'll add the Chipped Sapphire around the edge just to make that nice dark outside border. So I'm just adding a small amount of ink on all four sides, and then we'll blend that out with the Peacock Feathers. I have sped this up because obviously it does take a little while to go between the colors to make sure you get a nice blend. But yeah, if you continue working, you can normally always get a nice smooth blend with these Distress Oxides. They're just so creamy and easy to blend. So I'll just continue working between them. And just add a little bit more of that darker blue on the outside edge. Go again with the Peacock Feathers to make sure that's nice and smooth transition. And I'll set that panel aside to dry. I will be using the Wavy Pull Tab Starter Set from Lawn Fawn to create my interactive portion, and I will be using all the elements from that pack. To match in with my background, I have die cut out the pull tab portion at a blue cardstock, and then I'm just going in with the Chipped Sapphire just to kind of get a matching color to that front panel. So I do like to do 2 layers to make sure you've got a nice sturdy pull tab, and I'm just using a blending brush to get that applied to my cardstock. Now our background panel is dry. I'm just going to use the opening portion to have that opening for the pull tab up the top. There is this die that comes with the actual pull tab set that allows you to work out where the actual opening for your arms will go. So I'm just lining that up so that that sits perfectly with that top opening. Putting some purple tape down to hold that in place, and then we'll just slot that little opening for our arm holder in. So you'll see that there's the 2 vertical slots. Slide that into the opening of that stencil and tape that down with some purple tape as well, so that we can run that through our die cutting machine and they'll both be in the perfect spot. So I'll do that off camera. So now that we've run that through our die cutting machine, just be careful when you remove your tape. Now we've got our perfect opening up the top and our 2 little openings for the arms to come through. Now with a piece of white printer paper, I'm just going to cut the pull tab holder. So this just folds up to make a little sleeve for our pull tab to go through, and it just makes sure our pull tab runs in a straight fashion. So I'll just add a little bit of glue to the tab, close that off and set that aside to dry. Now our pull tab ink is dry. I'm just going to glue these 2 together. So obviously I did ink both sides, so we want to put the uninked sides together. So you only need to put the glue on one of the sides. So make sure you get a good amount to ensure it sticks really well. Line that up with the opening, and we'll set that aside to dry once that's all lined up. Now I've also done some ink blending to have our pull tab topper. So you'll see that in my little glass tray there. Now we'll be using a brad to attach our arms to the pull tab. So I'm just using my hole punch just to cut a couple of holes in the arms for that brad to go through and attach. So you'll see me now grab a brad. I've gone with blue as well just to make sure all the colors match in case it is seen from the other side. It shouldn't be, but I like to just err on the side of caution. So I'm getting the arms attached through that brad. Now, it doesn't matter which way you go, you can put your left one or your right one first, but just make sure that they're lined up in the correct position once you slot them through the opening like I'm doing now. They slot through really well, and you can see that brad's kind of showing, so I'm just going to move that so that's hidden behind that background. And we'll just use some purple tape to hold that in place while we get our front stamps lined up to do some white heat embossing. I've grabbed out my MISTI so that we can line everything up and then remove those arms once we do our stamping. So the MISTI works great for this. I'm just using this Snow Much Fun set from Lawn Fawn to do my snow angels underneath. So I've just grabbed out my image, just going to grab that stamp to line that up in place over our little baby Bominable, making sure that's in the correct spot. And now double checking before we actually remove those arms out, and also do the so that we can do the actual stamping and the white heat embossing. So we'll just set that aside, and we'll also just work out where we want our little penguin to go, because I want him to also be have a snow angel form around him. So I'm just going to slot him on the card front, line up the smaller version in that stamp set, get that attached to the front of my MISTI, and now we can do both of those together. So I'm just going to attach that magnet to the side so it won't get in the way of either of those two stamps, and prep up my panel with my anti-static powder tool. I'll be using Versa watermark ink. Now, I hadn't used these before, so I thought I'd give them a quick prep with my finger before stamping them up, and we'll give them a double stamp to make sure we've got a nice impression for our heat embossing powder to go on to. So I'm going to be using white today so that it sets off really nicely against that blue backdrop. So I'll give that a double tap on, and then use my little angled paintbrush to remove any excess particles that might have come off. Even though you use the anti-static powder tool, sometimes you will get a few little stray pieces of embossing powder, and using this brush just removes those so that it doesn't splatter on your card front. I've preheated my heat gun, and just go on the back first to remove any particles, and then come to the front to get our heat embossing powder all nice and melted. So now that I've got both of those done, I'll set this panel aside to cool down before I actually do anything else with this panel. Now I thought, well, I've got my heat gun already heated up, I may as well get my sentiment put on as well. So I'm going to use the sentiment Snow Much Fun, and I'm just going to angling them off in 3 ways so that they're kind of a little bit offset. So again, using that anti-static powder tool to get that panel prepped up before I go in with my Versa watermark ink. Again, give that a double stamp to get a nice impression. Grab my folded piece of A4 printer paper to catch my excess embossing powder. And as I said, I've got my heat gun already heated up, so this will get melted really quickly. And again, we'll allow that to cool down and dry. Now I wanted a kind of snowy, glittery background to go with my blue ink blended panel. So I've grabbed out my metallic Alt New watercolors, and just going to use my sprayer just to get a little bit of moisture. I do allow that to sit for a little while so that gets that paint nice and moist, and go in with my rounded brush to get a nice splatter over my panel. So just go in a couple of times to make sure we get the spray that we want, and now that's going to have a nice shimmery effect over the top. Now we'll get everything constructed on the card. So I've got my arms back in place again, and I'm just going to line that up with a bit of tape to hold that in place while I grab out my little tab to hold that pull tab in place. So I've got that sleeve, and we'll put a little bit of glue onto that so that that attaches to the back of our background panel. just slide that sleeve up into place just below that brad. Give that a press. And now that is ready, so that will hold that in place as it slides up and down. So now our arms are moving up and down. To ensure that pull tab doesn't go too far down, I'm going to just grab out some foam tape and get that attached. So I'm going to make a little stopper at the bottom of that, so that's as far as that will push down. Just making sure that's lined up and that hits it perfectly in the correct spot. And then we'll get the rest of our foam tape put on the back of our background. So you only need one layer of foam tape with this card. So I'm going to just put it around the edges of that, making sure we don't get it on or near that pull tab to get caught. And just double check that that's working and that stopper's in place. And now we'll get our little tab top put on. There's a little scored line where that folds in half, so it makes it really easy to do it. And then I just like to burnish that with my bone folder. And then we can just put a little bit of glue on both sides and get that attached to our pull tab. So just pull it out. I find it better to pull that pull tab out and make sure not to get any glue on the actual card front itself. Push that in place, and then I've cut out the arrow that goes in there in a bit of white cardstock to kind of match in with the other white elements of our card front. And now we've got our pull tab ready to go. Now, to ensure baby Bominable doesn't get in the way of those arms, we're going to prop him up with some foam tape. So I'm just checking where I need to place the foam tape in order not to get in the way of those openings or those arms. So we'll get a couple on his leg. And because he is propped up, I'm going to also prop up our little penguin. So I'm going to pop a bit of foam tape on the back of him as well. I've cut and scored a white card base for our card, and I'm going to partially remove the release paper on the right and left side, but fully pull it off on the inside. Line that up with our card base, and that way we can move it if we get it in the wrong spot with that not being fully adhered down. So I've pulled off those pieces of release paper, and now we're ready to actually get our images popped on the front. So I've taken off the release paper for baby Bominable and got him attached over his little snow angel, and we'll do the same with our little penguin. And give that a good press down and test that works, and his arms are going up and down perfectly. And this is the finished card for this tutorial. This set is so adorable, and I think you would make a fun interactive card, but I've also seen some amazing scenes done by the other design team members. Make sure to follow along with all the other YouTube Hot participants for your chance to win the entire new release. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck with the competition and have a great day. Bye.